I woke up that morning with this weird mix of disbelief and pride. You know that feeling when you've been grinding so hard, every late night, every phone call that made you feel like your throat was on fire, and suddenly, it clicks? Yeah, that morning was like that. The sunlight was spilling across my bed in these long, golden streaks, the kind that makes everything look softer, warmer, like the world itself is quietly applauding you. I stretched, and the smell of coffee hit me. Just right. The kind that makes you feel alive before your brain even fully wakes up. I didn't even need to check my phone at first, but of course, I did, and there it was. My notifications blowing up. Messages from colleagues, friends, even a few family members. Congratulations! You did it. Top of the charts. I felt my hands shake slightly, not from nerves, but from this kind of pure excitement that makes your heart beat faster, almost like your body can't believe it either. I made my way to my laptop, coffee in hand, and pulled up the sales dashboard. There it was, in bold, undeniable numbers. Number one. All the long hours, the rejected deals, the awkward calls in the middle of dinner, it had finally paid off. I leaned back in my chair and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. All of it. Worth it, I whispered to myself. Then, just as I was soaking it in, my inbox pinged. A flagged email from HR. I glanced at it, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. I read the subject line quickly and shrugged it off. Probably just another routine memo. Nothing could dampen this high, not now. I told myself, I've got a ceremony tonight. I'll deal with that later. Still, the little nagging in the back of my mind didn't fully disappear. Something about that email felt off. But for now, I ignored it. I had climbed this mountain. Today was mine. I walked into the office that morning feeling like I was floating just a few inches above the floor. Everyone seemed to know before I even said anything. Colleagues were nodding, some clapping me on the back, others shooting quick smiles my way. Top of the charts, they said. It sounded almost surreal hearing it out loud like that. There's something about that kind of recognition that makes you notice every tiny detail. The polished floors, the fluorescent lights reflecting off the walls, the quiet hum of computers. It all felt sharper, brighter, like the world had just shifted to make room for this one moment. I passed the awards posters in the hallway again, and I swear, they looked at me like they were nodding in approval. I had this little pep in my step, my coffee thermos swinging lightly in my hand. My inner voice was buzzing too, whispering, "This is it. Everyone's going to see you up there. This is your moment." I smiled at the thought, almost laughing at myself for feeling so giddy over something that, objectively, was just numbers on a screen. But to me, it was everything. And then, just as I was soaking in the energy, I heard a quiet whisper from one of the newer associates. I couldn't catch all of it, but the words "ceremony," "changes," floated in my direction. I froze for a second, trying to focus, but it was gone. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it didn't matter. I shook it off. Nothing could ruin this morning. Not now. I moved past the conference room, where the setup for the ceremony was already underway. The chairs were perfectly aligned, the banners hanging just so. The air had that faint scent of fresh paper, of new beginnings, and maybe just a hint of anxiety I didn't yet know I would feel. I could feel my heartbeat in my chest, a steady rhythm that seemed to say, "You've earned this." Still, somewhere in the back of my mind, that tiny spark of unease lingered, a fleeting shadow of doubt that I couldn't quite place. But I smiled. Anyway, straightened my posture, and let myself enjoy the moment. Today, at least for now, everything felt right. I hadn't even sat down in the conference room when my phone buzzed again. A new email, this time from HR. I barely paid attention at first, probably just another last-minute reminder for the ceremony. But something made me pause. The subject line was short, blunt: eligibility update, awards ceremony. My chest tightened. I clicked it open, scanning the words faster than my brain could process. And then it hit me. You are ineligible for the awards ceremony. My eyes flicked back to the screen. I read it again. No typo, no mistake. Just those words, flat and unfeeling, staring back at me. For a second, the world felt off balance. My hand, still holding the coffee cup, trembled slightly. I could feel my pulse in my temples. No, this can't be real. I muttered under my breath, staring at the email like if I looked hard enough, the words would rearrange themselves into something more reasonable. That I tried to scroll further for details, but it was vague. Due to policy changes, you do not qualify for recognition this year. That was it. No explanation, no acknowledgement of my work, no apology for blindsiding me. Just a cold dismissal of everything I'd fought for the past year. But I leaned back in my chair, letting my head fall against the backrest, trying to steady myself. Flashbacks hit me like punches. The countless nights I stayed at my desk until the office lights shut off, the weekends I spent dialing clients instead of seeing friends, the calls that ended in rejection or frustration, all of it. I'd worked for this. I had earned this. And now it was being taken away, and all I had to show for it was an email with zero empathy. That I felt a sting of anger. But beneath it was something sharper: confusion. How could this happen? How could I, the person who worked harder than anyone else, be stripped of the one thing I was looking forward to all year? I kept rereading the email, hoping for a loophole, a mistake, anything. But the words didn't change. They didn't care. Around me, the office hummed with its usual noise, but I felt completely isolated, as if a bubble had formed around me, cutting me off from everyone else. The laughter from coworkers, the chatter about last-minute ceremony, preparations, it all felt distant, irrelevant. In that moment, the victory I woke up feeling just hours ago seemed like it belonged to someone else entirely. After that email, I didn't even bother with the ceremony setup. I needed answers, clear, concrete answers, not the vague dismissal HR had sent. I walked through the office with this tight knot in my chest, trying to appear calm, but every step felt heavier than the last that I first went to HR. The receptionist gave me a sympathetic look, like she knew this was bad news. But when I asked to speak to someone immediately, I was met with excuses. Policies have changed, they said. Please wait for a formal meeting. Formal meeting? I wanted immediate answers, not some bureaucratic delay that felt like a slap in the face. That I tried to approach my manager next. She looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact. We're reviewing the situation, she muttered. I could see her lips tighten like she wanted to say more, but she didn't. Her silence spoke volumes. And in that silence, suspicion started creeping in. Something wasn't right. Was this a genuine mistake? Or had someone deliberately put me out of the running? Walking through the empty conference rooms and long hallways, I replayed conversations from the past few months. Certain colleagues came to mind: friendly smiles, seemingly helpful advice, subtle comments that now felt pointed. A flicker of doubt hit me. Did someone manipulate this? Did I miss a sign? I paused at the window, staring out at the city below, the hum of traffic and distant voices filtering in. My reflection in the glass stared back at me, tired, frustrated, angry, confused. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, echoing the tension building in my chest. I felt trapped in this bubble of uncertainty, like no one could give me the truth. Every unanswered question felt heavier than the last. I ran my hand over the cold metal door handle of the conference room I'd passed a few minutes ago, grounding myself in something tangible. I needed to figure this out. I needed clarity, not for pride, not for ego, but because this felt fundamentally wrong. That I walked past empty desks and half-packed files, hearing the faint sounds of typing, whispers, and the distant ringtone of a phone. Every ordinary office noise suddenly felt alien, like the normal world existed somewhere else, far away from the storm raging inside me. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was hiding something, and the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that this wasn't just an innocent mistake. It didn't take long before the fog of confusion turned into a sharp, piercing clarity. I found out the truth, or at least part of it. A coworker, someone I trusted, had subtly maneuvered behind the scenes. Maybe it wasn't even malicious at first, but somehow my hard work had been discounted, my recognition stolen. That email from HR suddenly felt personal. I remember the exact moment it hit me. I was staring at my computer screen, the same dashboard that had felt like victory just hours ago, and a message popped up in the internal chat. Casual, almost innocent. Guess the award ceremony will be interesting this year, huh? I stared at it, reading it 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. But no, it was clear. I felt a hollow sinking in my stomach, like someone had knocked the wind out of me. Flashbacks came in fragments. I remembered sharing my sales strategies with that colleague, staying late to help them close deals, celebrating small wins together. I thought we were on the same team. I thought they were a friend. And now I realized I had been blindsided. The subtle smirk during casual conversations, the little jokes that felt harmless before, they all had a new, sharp edge. I sank into my chair, my hands gripping the edges like they could hold me together. My mind raced. Why me? Why now? It wasn't just about the award anymore. It was about trust, about fairness, about the principle that hard work should mean something. I felt small, powerless, and raw, like everything I believed in about my workplace, my colleagues, even myself, had been shaken. The office noise around me faded into nothing. I could hear the distant echo of my own heartbeat, the faint hum of fluorescent lights above, and the soft click of keyboards. But inside, it was chaos. Anger, sadness, disbelief. They collided in ways I didn't know I could feel all at once. I replayed conversations in my head, trying to pinpoint the moment I had been betrayed, tracing back every word, every laugh, every friendly gesture. And yet, amidst that whirlwind of emotions, a tiny spark remained. I didn't know what to do with it yet, but it was there, a sense that I wasn't going to let this break me completely. I just needed clarity and maybe a little justice. That evening, I got home and collapsed onto my couch like a deflated balloon. The house was quiet, almost painfully so. Usually, I'd put on some music or talk to someone about my day, but tonight, silence felt right. I needed to sit with it, the anger, the hurt, the disbelief that I stared out the window at the city lights, flickering in the distance. Rain had started to fall, tapping softly against the glass, a steady rhythm that somehow mirrored my thoughts. I wrapped my hands around a lukewarm cup of coffee and just let my mind replay every moment of the day. The ceremony, the congratulatory messages, the HR email, every memory felt like a knife twisting slowly. Flashbacks came unbidden. I remembered my first big sale, the day I thought I'd truly proved myself. I could see my mentor's proud expression, feel the rush of excitement in my chest, remember the sense that anything was possible. And now, that sense of possibility felt fragile, almost hollow. The betrayal from earlier today had chipped away at something I hadn't realized was so fragile that I scrolled through the HR email again, looking for anything I might have missed, some clue, a loophole, a shred of decency. But it was still just words, cold and unfeeling. I rubbed my eyes and exhaled heavily, realizing I was numb. Not completely broken, but suspended somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and rain, a comforting yet melancholic combination. I set my mug down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling, letting the hum of the city and the patter of raindrops fill the silence. I thought about all the sacrifices I'd made for this job, the evenings missed with friends, the weekends spent dialing clients instead of resting, and the sudden realization that none of it mattered to the people who should have acknowledged it. And yet, even in that numbness, there was a flicker of something else, determination. I didn't know how yet, but I knew I couldn't let this end here. I needed to act, to take back some control over what felt like the most unfair day of my life. But for now, I just let myself feel everything, the betrayal, the sadness, the exhaustion. It was all there, raw and unfiltered, and for the first time since morning, I let it out in a quiet, heavy sigh that I sat at my desk that night, the glow of the laptop screen casting a pale light across my face. The rain outside had turned heavier, drumming against the window like a persistent reminder that I couldn't just let this go. I opened a blank email, fingers hovering over the keyboard, heart still heavy from the day's chaos that I didn't know where to start. Part of me wanted to scream, to pour every ounce of frustration into words that would sting. Another part of me wanted to be calm, measured, careful, because if I wanted any real resolution, I needed them to listen. I took a deep breath and reminded myself, this isn't just an email. This is my statement. Flashbacks crept in as I typed slowly, each word deliberate. I remembered staying late to train that colleague, sharing strategies I thought would help the team, celebrating small wins that now felt bittersweet. Those memories fueled my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for an award anymore. I was demanding acknowledgement for the work I had poured my soul into. I paused, rereading what I had written so far. There was a subtle edge of sarcasm in one line, just enough to hint that I wasn't naive, that I knew the truth, that I wasn't someone to be brushed aside. I deleted a few drafts, rewrote sentences, added a few carefully chosen phrases to make my point clear but professional. At one point, I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, thinking they might not like this. They might resist. But they have to see me now. They can't ignore what I've done. I imagined the reaction on their faces as they read the words, and a small, almost guilty smile crossed my lips. Not smug, not triumphant. Just satisfied that finally, I had taken control. The rain continued outside, the soft glow of the city beyond my window creating a quiet, almost cinematic backdrop. I typed the final lines, checked and rechecked for tone, clarity, and impact. Then, with a deep breath, I paused. My fingers hovered over the send button. This was it. No more waiting. No more silence. Whatever happened next, I had made my stand. I stared at the screen for what felt like an eternity. The email was ready, polished, every word weighed and measured. My finger hovered over the send button. My chest felt tight, my pulse quickening. Like I was about to step off a cliff. That I thought about everything. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the endless nights of work that no one had acknowledged. This was my chance to reclaim a little piece of control, to make sure my voice was heard. And yet, beneath that determination, there was anxiety. What if it was ignored? What if it made things worse? I glanced out the window at the rain-soaked city below. Each drop racing down the glass mirrored my own racing thoughts. I pictured the email landing in their inbox, imagining their reactions. Maybe a pause, a raised eyebrow, a whispered conversation. The thought gave me a tiny thrill, vindication in advance, even if just in my mind. Finally, I pressed send. The soft ping echoed through my quiet apartment, and immediately the weight shifted. It was done. No going back. My heart was still hammering, adrenaline coursing through me, but there was also a strange calm. I had acted. I had taken control in the only way I could. I sat back, staring at the screen, fingers intertwined, letting the tension ebb slowly. The rain continued, a soothing soundtrack to my nerves. I thought about the coming hours, waiting for a response. That waiting, that anticipation, felt almost worse than the betrayal itself. But I also felt proud. I had spoken up. I had refused to be invisible. For a long while, I just sat there, letting the sound of the rain and the faint hum of the city keep me company. Every so often, I glanced at my inbox, almost unwilling to see what might come. But deep down, I knew this was more than just an email. It was my stand. My declaration that I would not be overlooked. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time my phone buzzed or my laptop chimed, my heart skipped a beat. When the first email came in the morning, I stared at it for a few seconds before even opening it, trying to steady my trembling hands, and then I read it. Finally, clarity. Finally, acknowledgement. HR had responded. They admitted the mistake, or perhaps the oversight, offering an apology I hadn't dared to hope for. The words on the screen were straightforward, professional, but unmistakably clear. My work mattered, my achievements were valid, and the error would be corrected. I remember leaning back in my chair, a slow, almost disbelieving smile spreading across my face. Relief washed over me in a way I hadn't expected. My chest, tight and heavy for days, finally felt lighter. The tension in my shoulders eased, just a little, as if the office itself was exhaling with me. Flashbacks flickered in my mind again, but now they felt warm instead of bitter. I remembered the long nights, the sacrifices, the first big sales, wins, the mentoring sessions I'd shared. Each memory now had its rightful weight, its proper acknowledgement. I felt seen. Even if it came later than I wanted, I even chuckled softly at one line in the email, a subtle recognition of my persistence and professionalism. The sarcasm I had laced into my own message had not gone unnoticed. That tiny victory felt sweet, almost poetic. I realized that this wasn't just about the award anymore. It was about respect, about being recognized as someone who worked hard and refused to be dismissed. For the first time since the ordeal began, I felt proud without reservation. Not the fleeting pride of a top sales number or a shiny award, but a deeper pride in my own resilience, my willingness to stand up, to act rather than let injustice pass. It felt like a quiet triumph, one that didn't need an audience to be. By the time the day was over, I felt a quiet kind of peace settle over me. The storm of betrayal, heartbreak, and frustration had passed, leaving behind a clearer view of what mattered. Sitting at my desk, I realized that recognition, though nice, wasn't the ultimate measure of my worth. My growth, my persistence, and the work I poured into my craft were what truly defined me. That I thought back to the morning when everything had felt perfect. The coffee, the sunlight, the congratulatory messages. I smiled softly. That feeling of pride hadn't been entirely lost. It had just shifted, evolved. It was no longer tied to external validation, but to the quiet satisfaction of knowing I had fought for myself and stood my ground. Walking out of the office that evening, I noticed the sunset spilling gold and orange across the sky. The city seemed softer somehow, less imposing, more alive. My steps felt lighter, my posture more relaxed. I had been tested, yes, and I had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more confident in my own value. Flashbacks of the past few days ran through my mind, but now they were tinged with clarity instead of pain. Every late night, every frustrating email, every moment of doubt, they had all led me to this point. I realized that the lesson wasn't about the award at all. It was about understanding that I had control over how I reacted, over how I let the world define me. And as I walked past my colleagues, exchanging casual smiles and greetings, I felt a quiet satisfaction. There was no grand celebration, no dramatic applause, just life moving forward, and me moving with it, unshaken. I knew there would be challenges ahead, inevitable setbacks, and maybe even more moments of unfairness. But now I had learned to navigate them, to take action, and to hold my head high no matter what. That night, as I looked out at the city lights, I let myself breathe deeply. For the first time in days, I wasn't carrying anger or doubt. I was carrying growth, resilience, and a sense of closure. And that, I realized, was far more valuable than any award.